Hello and welcome to Real Actors, Real Answers, the podcast where you are the star. Today, I would like to talk about a friend of mine. He's in Ohio. He is a director, a producer, a writer, a cinematographer. He does everything. His name is William Schotten, and he is the owner of Five Stone Films. Hello, William. How are you?
Hi, David. Good.
How's the weather there?
Beautiful. As you can see, it's a beautiful fall day, October day, my favorite month of the year.
Colorful.
Yes, it's things are starting to turn out there, and we're really enjoying a nice sunny fall day here.
So, tell me something about how you started as a director. How did that all begin?
That was like anybody who gets bit by the filmmaking bug, David. It's you make a stupid decision and quit school, quit college, quit your education to go do something like that. So, but when I started out, it was a lot different than it is now. Now the tools available for people now to make films. I mean, their phones shoot better footage than my first camera did when I made my first feature film. When we started, we were shooting on, I don't know if you can see that or not. We were shooting on Super 8mm. That's what we started on, and made a film called Dead Life. And Dead Life was a sort of a fluke because it was an awful film, but ended up in like Hollywood Video and what's the other one? Circuit City, Tower Records, all these, like, at the time, these places are all closed now. I don't know if you realize this or not, and I think Dead Life had something to do with it. I like to say that my first film closed down more chains than Walmart. But it was sort of a fluke, and we celebrated some success from that. And for the next 10 years, we progressively got better, but never got past like hobby. So I was still working, full time and doing other things, and all my guys were working full times and doing other things, and we never got past that. At the time, we were Schotten Filmworks. That was our name. We weren't. Five Stone didn't come along until I began working professionally afterwards. So, but through those years, we saw like the advent of digital production, and things came along that made things a lot cheaper. So Super 8 film, we got rid of that and started shooting digital, and all horror films. And there's actually a documentary. I don't know if you've seen the documentary about those 10 years. It's on Tubi and Amazon Prime. It's called Decommissioned, Better Luck Next Time. And it's about our failure as filmmakers through those 10 years. So kind of chronicles our big dreams and poor execution.
I have got to look that up. What a brave title.
Yeah, it's apropos. So, but then, then I gave up feature film to work, professionally shooting talking head pieces, so for corporations and stuff like that. But but doing that, like, it gave me two things. It showed me I wasn't ready to make feature films, obviously, because I made 9 failures, and worked in the industry for a while as a cinematographer, and eventually it became time to make films again, and I wanted to make faith-based films. So along came The Abiding Nail, and that's what we just wrapped on now. So last month is when we wrapped on it.
When is it coming out?
Oh, I don't know. So we got a pretty lengthy post-production ahead of us on it, and then we're going to do the Film Fest route, and then after we try to get some laurels on it, we'll try to maybe possibly make a deal with, maybe, I don't know, Pure Flix or Sony Affirm Films, something like that. So it's going to be a while, but that being said, like, you can follow all the progress on Facebook. We have a Facebook page for it that we'll be updating. Which, David, you were supposed to be, you were going to be part of it until, until we had some technical difficulties with your travel. So, but maybe definitely the next one though, David. So
Definitely, and I appreciate so much for you considering me for that film. Now, I don't want you to reveal too much because it's not officially out, and I respect that. However, could you give us a little sneak preview about what is it about?
sure, yeah. The Abiding Nail is about a girl named Ness who gets discovered and leaves her small town, Ohio town of Willow Falls, to go find stardom. And this is where all those old movies came in handy for us, because Ashley Rossi, who played Ness, was in most of those movies I did years ago. And so we used those movies as part of her like catalog of films she made in Hollywood. And she goes to Hollywood and she gets a really bad drug habit and starts living a really rough life in Hollywood, and gets humiliated when she's in the midst. She gets photographed in the midst of a drug induced psychosis. So she's having a meltdown, and this place takes place back in 1998. So it's a different time. It's sort of a period piece. And so she comes home to sort of escape all the bad publicity, where her father does two things: helps reconnect her to the Lord, and help her through her drug recovery. So, and the film is sort of her community, her being a star and then reacclimating into normal life as a small town country girl where she came from. So that's what The Abiding Nail is about.
That sounds really excellent. I love it. It's very needed, I think, a message such as that in this day and age to wake people up.
Yeah, I mean, as we become, I know there's a whole movement for the acceptance of drug use. But coming from my past, my history, I'm a recovered drug addict, which is, has a lot to do with the script, on why I wrote the script, and why I wanted to make the movie, and why I decided to pull back from my world of shooting corporate video is very lucrative, but it's not entirely satisfying, if you know what I mean, David. It's like it's sort of like it's about the equivalent of being a cinematographer and getting hired by Ohio Edison to go shoot Transformers, right?
Wow. Okay.
You see what I'm saying? It's like it pays the bills, and I am very blessed and appreciative for the work, but it's when you set out to shoot or be the cinematographer on a feature film, much less the writer and the director, as far as I know, being the writer, director, and cinematographer on a film, on a successful film, I think the only time I've seen that done was by a legend named Haskell Westler on a film called Medium Cool back in like 1968. And he was a genius, and I'm from Ohio. So, it's gonna take a whole lot of luck to make this happen, because but luckily the crew, the cast, the crew, they really carried the thing along while I was so occupied by filling those roles on the production. So I'm very grateful for them.
So you had a network of people helping you, supporting you.
I have the most amazing crew and cast that I could possibly ever wish for. I mean, these guys, I got hired to do the cinematography work on a film in the past, and I met most of them on it. I remember like working with these guys and going, man, if I ever make a film, I got to give these guys a phone call, because they're very, very good at what they do. My assistant director, Bill Long, I started working with him. We set out. Have you ever heard of Pure Flix before?
Yeah.
I got hired to do the Steadicam work in the winter time. We'd already been funded for The Abiding Nail. I got hired to do Steadicam work on a Pure Flix original called The Christmas Angel. That's the working title. I don't know if that's the title it's coming out of.
I heard of this title. I think I've seen it advertised on Facebook.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it was, like I said, it's a Pure Flix original. It was a really, really. Josh Manning was the director on it. The operation was amazing. It helped me get a look at how how things are done professionally in the feature film world. It allowed me to be involved in the process to see what the best ways to do things, and the fact of how important it is actually to pay people, right? I mean, the getting everybody together to do these movies we did before where there was no money to pay people, but when you find investment money and you team up with producers who are willing to spend the money to make for a good movie, which was both Andy and Katie, the two other executive producers on this, being able to pay your people really brings it. They see the project differently than maybe if they were just giving them their weekends. Things become real serious, and it's like shooting on with heavier equipment. Every move becomes very, very deliberate. The organization becomes very deliberate, very, very focused on their jobs. But the Christmas Angel was I was on that job for 3 days, which I brought along Bill Long, who ended up being my assistant director on the Abiding Nail, to help me in and out of the equipment. Well, me and Bill ended up working like for months after that. I have a corporate job. I call Bill up and he comes out with me and helps me, and that gave him the opportunity to really learn how the equipment works. So by the time we hit Abiding Nail, he was like boom, 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 boom. He would everything out that I needed, everything set up that I needed. But he was one member of many. We had guys like Ross Carlo, who was, I like to refer to him as the set mechanic. He'd build things he'd built like a rain machine, fabricated some big rain bar that had all these pipes and stuff that went 25 feet in the air. You don't really get that I've never gotten an opportunity to work like that with people, the people that could like really do that sort of stuff. I had a production manager, Chris, he was my communications czar. Having these people alongside of me to make this film was, I couldn't have done it without them. The thing would have been two people talking in a kitchen, kind of like we're doing right now. That'd be my film right there. So yeah, tremendous, amazing crew, cast as well.
It sounds like you've had quite a remarkable run, but it also sounds like it's been a lot of creative work and involving a lot of patience.
Yeah. Because of the I'm at the time we were making the film, we were shooting it on Saturdays, over 15 Saturdays. Everything was scheduled out. We stayed on schedule and on budget through the entire thing. I also, running my company, Five Stone, would run that for 40 hours a week. Plus, I'm the tech director at Old North Church. Those duties needed to continue. And then the feature film on top of that. Yeah, by the end, the cracks were showing in me a little bit. I was pretty happy. I think it needed to wrap when it wrapped, so that I could kind of take some time and pull back, and the cast and crew. I could tell the cast and crew. Some of them, I heard the comments of that they didn't want it to end. No, people don't want it to end. Some of them were really sad that it ended. I was sad that it ended, even though it was a lot of pressure. You get used to getting together to create this stuff on one day a week, and when it's gone, you're like, wow, man, it's like maybe we should all just get together and hang out in a social hall somewhere on Saturdays.
It was a special time then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Probably out of all the films I've ever done, I always chased the feeling of that first film, David. Like when I did Dead Life in 2002, there was a very special feeling to that film, and I chased that for years and never caught up to it. And until now, when we did this, it was definitely a new chapter in my cinematic life. I could definitely tell something has restarted, and I think hopefully this is going to be the beginning of many. So
I like what you just said. Let me see if I can do it as well as you did. When you made your first film and you were chasing that feeling, which is what you wanted for so many years, and you finally caught up with it. That, what I like to refer to in my own coaching is you had to reinvent yourself. Sometimes you lose that momentum for this, that, and the other reason. You can catch up to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I really thought it was just because I made nothing but horror films for those 10 years between 2012 or 2012 to 2002, going backwards. I think it was like 9 horror films. One of them didn't get finished. Most of them, they were all like, I don't know, varying like quality, varying success. So some of them went to retail stores, but we never experienced financial gain on it. We always lost money every time. The only one we didn't lose money on was one we did called Below Ground. And we decided one year during October, this beautiful month, we were going to shoot a feature film in 24 hours and get together. We were going to sort of play act the whole thing. I've got a bunch of cards with the scenarios on it. This is what we're going to do. All right, go. And it was a found footage thing, of course, at the time. This would be like 2010. And we would all just sort of like, and it was about, there was this demon invasion, and we were just trying to hide in this house from this demon invasion. And people kept showing up. That's another one, Ashley Rossi, who was in The Abiding Nail. She's always, me and Ash have been making movies for so long. We're such good friends at this point. We really enjoyed doing that. And we did it, and I signed it with a company called Worldwide Multimedia. And 1 year later, during Halloween, I think, that thing was sitting on the shelves in Walmart. And we spent maybe $100 on it. Right. I mean, it was like just a goofy thing we did. That the only time I've ever been in Walmart was on a film that I spent less than $100 on. So that was the only one I think we didn't lose money on, if I'm thinking. Even Dead Life came up with the big distribution deal that had. We came up about $1,000 short in making the money back. So that's still technically lost money.
But $100, do you realize that's like a legend? You spend $100 and it goes into the Walmart Hall of Fame. It tells you if you were, what was going through your mind and through your heart when you did that, all on 24 hours. Was that your idea, the 24 hours?
I was being lazy. I wanted to get something out. I didn't have any money. During those years, I was pretty broke. I didn't have any money, but we were all, there was the crew, the group of us who got together, Ashley included, and we would make these like money. We would always like find somebody that would invest $3,000 or $5,000, and we would always think if we could just get one more investment, we could make it and all like go on and make feature films for a living. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was not good at what I did. Okay, that's the problem. Is I didn't know what I sort of like would mimic what a film would look like with the dolly shots, but there was a lot of, until later on in life, 10 years later, realize that some of these movements are purposeful. There's a purpose to these different things. In cutting, there's a reason you cut into a close-up. It's not just because it looks cool, right? Because, something has changed in the tone of the scene. That's why you cut up to the close-up. And then when things get a little less tense, you cut back to the medium shots. You know what I mean? It's like, I didn't know these things until I started reading. I wish I had YouTube when I had begun filmmaking, but YouTube wasn't even a consideration. There wasn't even a thing at the time, right? MySpace was created when I was making films. That's how long ago that was. So yeah, I mean, and I didn't even know I didn't really have a clue on how to direct actors. As far as I was considered, David, if you remembered your lines, you were a superstar to me. If you could remember the dialogue that was on the page, there was no directing for me back then. That came later on.
Interesting. I marvel at that, because you went with your gut. I'm going back to that, the Walmart. The movie was called again. I'm sorry. What was it called?
It was called Below Ground. But
right.
when I made the artwork for it, it was called Below Ground, and then it had some demon like face on the cover, which was really just me with a set of dentures that Arthur Collins had made. He made these demon dentures, And
Right.
I messed with it and photoshopped it or whatever. Well, then when Worldwide Multimedia got their hands on it, they put like a 900-foot Satan on the front of the thing over a village. And I'm like, that's not in the movie. And people are going to see that and expect it to be in the movie. And yeah, it was underwhelming when they did finally see my little homemade video. If you haven't realized or not, the business model for feature films has changed. Okay. So back in the day, you could put, like when Dead Life came out, you could put the most amazing cover out there. And people would go to the video store and they'd look at it and they go, wow, I'm buying that. Look at the cover. Flip it around. You put some of your coolest images from the film on the back. They're like, oh, look at the synopsis. Look at I'm buying this. I'm spending my $10 on this. And they buy it. And then they go home. And then they watch it. And then they're like, this is terrible. I just wasted my $10, right? That was the old days, right? I mean, that was the home video days. Well, now everything's streaming. Everybody watches 3 minutes. This sucks. Click. They're on to the next thing, right? They don't even so much as, there's no doing that anymore for distribution or for distributors where they could get something. The only reason Dead Life signed a deal was because I had amazing key art for it. Like I created this amazing artwork for it. Darren Ramage over Maxim Media International goes, holy smokes, look at that thing. I can make that, I could sell copies of that, right? Based on that cover. Well, you know, those, it's not happening anymore. You have to actually make good movies now. You can't, people expect, they're not just looking for, you know, they're not just looking for a nice cover. They're looking for something to entertain them. As a matter of fact, collectible media is gone almost, unfortunately, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, people have a shorter attention span. And they don't even know half the time what they actually want. I mean, what they really, really want. This is why this below ground, it sounds to me like you were, number one, like Jim Carrey says, if you ain't desperate, nothing's going to happen.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you had this idea and you hit a threshold of pain or something. And okay, we're going to shoot a feature film in 24 hours. What? But it was your kid inside that just, we're going to do this. I don't care. I have nothing to lose and I'm going to do it. And look
Yeah,
what
I
happened.
mean, it came out okay. I mean, for what it was or what we put into it, it came out okay. As a matter of fact, it might have been the last, I don't know if you want to call it like a fun hurrah that we did, because we did one more movie after that, and it was Wormwood's End. That's on Tubi. And out of all the movies we did in that era, like that, the Wormwood's End came out most like a real movie than all the other films we had done in the past. But it took like 10 years for that to come out. You know, it just, you know, it was, even though it had nice effects in it and it looked more like a real movie and more production quality than the other films, it was, it's still just like a mediocre film, or maybe not even a mediocre film in a market where people, in a streaming market where people can watch it and go, no, thank you. You know what I mean? So like, so now you gotta, that's why I probably won't go back to doing much in the way of horror films anymore, because the market is so saturated by it. There's so much of, I mean, you go on Tubi and I think I got as far as 5,000 titles and was like, oh, I can't scroll through this anymore. I wanted to see how many titles were on there. And it's like, there's so much, you get buried, which is what Wormwood's End, being a very mediocre sort of movie, got buried in Tubi. So there's not much buzz. There's no buzz about it. So we moved on, which, you know, we do have, we're looking into doing a faith-based horror film called The Sepultura. I like to call it a Christian version of Hellraiser. That might be the next thing we do, possibly. I'm not entirely sure if we want to shift tones and go from kind of lighthearted, schmaltzy drama to, you know, something considerably darker, you know.
Right. Now, what was the moment that you switched from like horror and things you were doing to more like faith-based films? What changed you?
Faith, my drug addiction changed me considerably. I mean, that was you know, once faith found me, I should say, you know, that, which is, you know, I think it's in the movie, you know, Jesus wasn't lost, I was, you know what I mean? So I decided I really didn't want to do just sort of entertainment anymore. If I did something, I wanted it to matter I wanted it to be something that mattered, that I made it. Don't get me wrong. Like every week, every month, and my wife will tell you it's so obnoxious. The Blu-rays and DVDs that show up at the house. I buy horror films just as much as I ever did, but that's for me to be entertained. Feature film doesn't really fit into my life as a fun thing to do anymore, like it did 15 years ago. When you're driving a truck for a living, you need something you're looking for something to fill your, you know what I mean?
Right.
Where now I shoot full time. I'm a full-time cinematographer. I mean, I'm not really looking to go. I'm not looking to. I mean, how many times do you guys see cement masons for fun going on the weekends and putting their friends' driveways in for them? It doesn't happen, right? It's not. People always said, "Well, we're doing this 48-hour film challenge." I'm like, that sounds awful to me, because that's what I do for a living. I don't want to spend my weekends doing it too without some kind of like payout at the end. So I decided if I move into anything, I'd want to move into the faith-based world because of my faith convictions and faith. That being said, it doesn't fit without me eliminating a part of my life. So going forward in the future, hopefully the faith-based filmmaking would replace a chunk of my work life. So I would stop doing one thing to do this. That's the idea.
A very interesting, wonderful career. Yeah, I love your stories. People love stories. Now I have a question too,
Sure.
William. If a person was contemplating becoming a film director, becoming a cinematographer, even a script writer, what would you suggest they start out with? How do I start? Someone comes up to you. How do I start doing this?
I always, first of all, like learning. I don't know about going to film schools and such, because I've seen people come out of film schools and go and be like, they're really good at what they do when they come out of the film school. But then it seems like most of the people I see that go to the things, that half the time don't even really understand how a lens works. You know what I mean? It's like, and you're kind of like, man, that was about $100,000 worth of schooling, and you don't even know how to turn the key yet. So I think it starts with, some people have raw talent, and that goes for writing especially. And sometimes they just need to hyper focus their talent onto the right tools. So for cinematographers, actually, funny you should mention that. So directors, okay, there's this book here. This is film directing shot by shot, and this is by Stephen D. Katz. This is a book that I got years ago that helped tremendously. It's not just about directing actors, which there's some of that in it. It's more like directing art and directing camera. So it gives you examples of like storyboards and how those storyboards translate into production, and how they were finished off actually. And that's the starter book, okay? But the one I really liked was from the same author. It's film directing, in the second edition, cinematic motion, which tells you why the camera moves how it moves when it does.
What a great title.
Yeah, right. So that what separates when we watch movies, David, I mean, you always can tell within the first 3 minutes that this is a real movie as opposed to an amateur movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to a couple things, okay? If it's a night shot, and it's like you can see the field behind the actors, right? Like, oh, I can see the world at night, right? Which is not real life. What do we see at night is nothing, right? It's but in movies, did you ever notice, like in movies, like the world is illuminated at night against the black sky, and you're like, wow, that means they had a budget enough to pump out a bunch of HMI lighting in the fields behind them. In the daytime, it's always the quality of the film, or the quality of the highlights in the film, and camera movement, dolly shots, crane shots, these different things that are indicators of what makes what keeps people watching and says, I'm not wasting my time on somebody's weekend project, right? So if you do it right, like, you know, if you want to invest a little bit of money on simple things like a Dana dolly or something that is kind of compact and you can move it, or you can throw it in the back of your car, but you can show those moving dolly shots or show these basic small jib shots to kind of help trick people into thinking that this guy might know what he's doing, so that you can then now you have them, and now you can show them what you're doing. You can show them your story. You can show them what story you want to tell. But it's funny how fickle people are when it comes to like perceptive audio quality and production quality, where they won't give you a shot. They won't stop and listen to your story and see what you're trying to tell them if they don't see certain hallmarks of quality films.
I didn't know there was so much to it. I love what you said about, like, for example, the open field, you know, because subconsciously you can tell, oh, I didn't come here for real life. I came here to be wowed.
Exactly right. So for The Abiding Nail, we have in order to light our nighttime shots and to make them look bigger budget, we have something called the Aperture 600, which is a light cannon that the company called Aperture makes. And we take that, we put a Fresnel lens on it to double the power of it. And then we put it on a Matthew stand called the Mambo Combo, which is a hysterical name for a light stand. And it goes 25 feet into the air and just towers. It's so, the light stand's so high, there's a guy wire ring. So you could, if it's a little windy out, you could actually put guy wires down onto the ground. And putting it up so high, blasting it out over field simulates moonlight. And it really does make the difference. So they're talking in the car, but you can still see down the road while they're talking in the car. You know, it's Hollywood productions will have a dozen of these things along a road as they're driving along at night.
So that's how it works.
Yeah, and most of the time these are on grip trucks. Like you'll have 5 HMIs on a grip truck, and they'll come out with a bunch of these. I think most of the time now, if they're going out into the field and lighting, they'll put them on a Hilti lift where they can just go up and down on it instead of putting, like we put ours on a big stand because it's very small budget. We don't have the money to rent lifts and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's just putting the effort into the right parts of the production. People won't know that it's a low budget, or people won't know that, as long as it looks beautiful and it sounds beautiful, they'll perceive it as a bigger budget.
Looks beautiful and sounds beautiful. And I've done some research on this, and I've come up with something, but I'm not going to say what it is because I want to hear your opinion. Okay. What is more important, sound or the viewing?
Oh, sound every time. Yeah, sound every time. As a matter of fact, like you can get away with a lot as long as you have good sound design and recording quality. As long as the audio quality is high, and I think it's so, like, because streaming is so in vogue now, and the thing, and there are these different moments where people's internet connections fail and stuff. So whenever Netflix or these other streaming services, when they get a digital bottleneck and lose streaming capabilities, they'll cut the video way down before they'll even touch the sound. They don't even touch the sound because of what it does to the experience of streaming. They'll leave they'll kill audio, video every time before audio because of it's the one thing about a film with great sound design is when people are asked, well, what did you think of that film? They'll say, we think it was lit really well, when it really wasn't. It was really the sound design is tricking you into thinking that the film looks good. So every time, audio every time.
Wow, that's amazing. How people think, how people interpret.
It's the human brain. It's just sort of how we definitely see with our ears. It's true.
That brings up a new story, but I'm not going to get into it yet. But it's like, what about silent films? When there was music, but yet you had to really focus on their movement more than anything else.
Well, I see see where you're coming from. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Outside of the technical hurdles that they overcame with silent film, I mean, the cameras they shot those on were the size of Buicks. They were insane. As a matter of fact, I believe some of those the sets moved with the cameras because they required so much light so it'd be a
Wow.
giant. The studio was a giant box that was on a turntable, and they would turn it as the sun would, because there was not enough light to. If you ever have an opportunity, go and check out the history of motion picture film cameras, and what they overcame was pretty amazing for the time. However, I am not a fan of silent film like some people are. They're like, wow, this is it's kind of like the guy who, what film did Orson Welles write and direct? Citizen Kane. Every film school, what's your favorite film? Citizen Kane is always, man, I saw that film. It was just boring. That's, I don't have that sort of popular film school attitude on that stuff. And I'm probably going to get lambasted for saying this, David, but you might want to cut that out of there. So
It's fine. I have one more question, because it's going out to directors, going out to producers and script writers and actors that are both seasoned and beginners, because I teach both. How do you get how do you cast, and how can people find you and opportunities and connect with you?
Facebook is a good outlet for that. For instance, like The Abiding Nail, I had worked with, first of all, I wrote The Abiding Nail as a vehicle for Ashley, because, as a matter of fact, Ness, like her character, like her awkwardness is really like kind of like Ashley's, it's I sort of, and she's not the only one I wrote the character for. Like there was also Dawn, who is played by Jennifer Milligan, who she's kind of the Dawn character, right? But like, maybe we can talk about directing like actors. I mean, your niche is actor, like training actors how to be better actors, right?
Correct.
Just to maybe what I love as a director is when an actor gives me something I did not expect. So I can usually tell an actor is lacks confidence when they give me the low-hanging fruit, right? They give you the thing that sort of everybody goes to, right? The first thought, okay, you're scared, and they give you that, or when I see an actor acting with their eyebrows instead of their eyes, right? So like, like the eyebrow acting is always like, that's always like, we have Houston, we have a problem. And it's not that, and every actor has done it at one point in their development as an actor, everybody, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
But what I loved about both Ashley and also Jen Milligan is those two, but not limited to those two, were always really good at giving me when I would shoot them, they would do something I just didn't expect and loved. It really messed like Jen would like kind of throw out these like little funny things on the side, or Ashley would portray something in it like completely opposite of what I envisioned it when I wrote it. That's really special and not easy to do for actors, right? I mean, it's like we always, I did a little acting as well, and I got to tell you, I wasn't good at it. It was passable at best. So I got a lot of respect for you guys in the acting world. I'm so happy to stay behind the camera and focus on the technical aspects of a motion picture than to really, I mean, I'm going to tell you, the cast, like Ross Carlo played a character named Derek Dewey, and he did the whole thing with a Scottish accent, and he nailed those Scottish like tropes. And I'm like, wow. And he just stays in. Every now and again, when he get really tired, he starts slipping out of it, right? So, and I could tell when Ross was getting tired that he was having a hard time keeping. But it's a very give the director something maybe they're not expecting. Go for that go for that fruit that's right at the top of the tree. Sometimes that's the best fruit, right? You know, it can be because we never get to reach it. And for heaven's sakes, you know, man, if you can't do it with your eyes, you're not going to do it with your eyebrows.
What a great thing to say. May I
Yeah.
borrow that?
You can have it. It's
I
yours.
will give you credit for it. If you
You don't have to.
No, I do. I always do that. Wow, that's very true, though. Like indicating an emotion rather than playing it out.
Yeah, well, the number one rule for motion picture film, which is I think maybe why most faith-based films don't come across too well as entertainment, like because you know traditionally in the past faith-based films have been sort of hard to watch. You know, they can be a little corny, or they get oddly explanatory throughout, and because and a lot of times pastors are making the films, or pastors are heading up the production. And what do pastors do? They tell, right? Their job is to tell, right? To deliver the message. Well, I don't come from a pastoral background. I come from a filmmaking background. And what does a filmmaker do? He shows, he doesn't tell. So you want to show it. You don't want to tell it. If you're showing it and not telling it, you're doing it right. But if everybody kind of comes together and has that conversation, there's four people that all walk up and everybody's saying, and yeah, and this is why this is this way. Oh yes, you make a great point. And I also think it feels weird, right? Everybody's sitting around going, what is happening in this movie right now?
And you want to be kind because faith-based film, you know, so you
exactly. I'm completely sympathetic to it, right? To the message. But you have to also understand the fact that we have to entertain as well, or we have to do it right. You know, you have to, if you're going to offer exposition on something, be subtle, right? So, you know, there's also that sort of filmmaking rule of thumb that needs to be followed in the faith-based world, but seldom gets followed.
I like it because you just solved a mystery that I've been having for quite some years. Is when I embrace faith-based films. There, I said it. And I ran across the same thing that you were describing, but I could not figure out for the life of me. And now I know. Show and tell. If you show, you leave it to the audience to figure it out, which we love to do.
Yeah.
But if you're just telling,
and if you show it properly, then there's no figuring it out. It's you know, it's the audiences aren't stupid. Audiences are really smart, actually. You know, film audiences. They don't need to be led by the hand. And if you do add a little air of mystery to your message, sometimes that's perceived as being one of those smartest films I ever saw was Jacob's Ladder. And that film has confounded some people to where they just don't understand what's happening. But the people that get it are like, man, that is a masterful film. I mean, it's so smart and so well thought out. And you could tell the man who created it was a real craftsman in his field. He really knew how to craft an ingenious story. So I think it's important to treat. I think Christian audiences need to be treated like all audiences. You know, if you're making films and trying to explain them the way that they're done in that world, not all of them. I mean, there are some of the newer films have really. It's like faith-based music. The quality is beginning to come up considerably. It's getting better. I think consultants, if you're going to be a pastor and you're going to make a film, I think consult on what makes films actually work. And remember that it's not a sermon. It's a message, but it has to be shown. Very
wisely said. William, I asked once again, but it's worth repeating, and I want people to contact you. How would they do so?
Facebook's the easy way to do it.
Okay.
You know, it's the easy way to do it. I have also, you can reach me at fivestonefilmworks@yahoo.com if you want to email me. And I also have a fivestonefilmworks.com website. So, but usually if we put the casting calls out, we're going to do it through social media generally, unless social media really gets to be you know, a muddled mess. I don't know. You know, that stuff has changed. It used to be Facebook, David. I don't know if you remember that. Not Facebook. It used to be MySpace is when I was doing my movies. That's how we would communicate.
Yes,
So
I had a MySpace and I was just figuring it out, and I technically, no, I don't want, and then it just sort of faded into the distance.
right, but here's the crazy thing, David,
What?
is you still have a MySpace. You just don't know it. It's still there. It just sits there like an abandoned home. So maybe go back and see if
Really?
if anybody's living in it.
There's plenty of space. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's still there.
Hey, thank you so much for being on my show. It has been
Hey,
enriching and enlightening, and I know it will be for so many other people.
hey, it's my pleasure.
All right.
All right.
Enjoy your day. Thank you so much.
You too.